in Hollywood.
Exhibitor Relations expects the Chronicles of Narnia Prince Caspian to be one of the top 3 movies in worldwide grosses by Labor Day as Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy return to Narnia only to find the magical world they remember to be a vastly different place.
Hi, I'm Ben Barnes. You're watching Made in Hollywood, and here's a scene from my upcoming film.
I think it's time we found out what went on here.
Who are you?
I am Prince Caspian.
How did you feel when you heard that you won the part of Prince Caspian, being that you grew up reading C.S. Lewis's series of books?
I was just entirely overexcited. I didn't know what to think. It was the middle of the night. I told them to call me as soon as they found out, which happened to be 4 o'clock in the morning, and there's no real precedent for how you should feel at that point, so I just ran around the house making as much noise as possible.
Did you feel that you had to live up to a character?
I felt definitely like I had to be faithful to the character in the book, who's not your kind of typical action hero. He's actually quite a reluctant man, boy who finds himself in these situations, and he doesn't feel he's ready for the responsibility that is bestowed on him, because he's the one Marine who believes in old Narnia and can kind of reign after the Pevensies have gone.
Remember any ruins in Narnia?
I wonder who lived here.
I think we do.
Your characters, Lucy and Peter, have certainly developed since the first film. How do they feel when they return to Narnia?
I think they've actually developed quite a lot, and this is a very, very different Narnia. This is 1,300 years later. Even though they've matured a year, Narnia's matured even more and almost, gone back into itself, as Peter Dinklage, who plays Trumpkin, says. The trees have gone back to themselves, and I think that's what's happened to Narnia. You might be surprised.
A lot can happen in 1,300 years. Telmarines have taken over. They've tried to shove out the Narnians. There's been this whole thing of how some of the Narnians no longer know how to speak, because they've been treated like animals, so they've just become animals, and so Narnia's in turmoil, and it's a real social issue. So we now come back and help the rightful prince sort of restore Narnia to its traditional values.
You may find Narnia a more savage place than you remember.
I think one of the important things to remember at the start of this film, and which we tried to show in the opening scenes, is the fact that the first time round these kids have had to go from being kids to being kings and queens, and in between these two stories they've actually had to go back to being children again. Suddenly they don't have these amazing adventures in Narnia, and they have to go to school and do things like that. So that's been a hard adjustment for them, I think.
You must make for the woods. They won't follow you there.
He is the prince of the Telmarines, but he's thrown out of his kingdom.
Basically, his uncle has murdered his father, and he's had a son of his own, and so his evil uncle no longer has use of Caspian as the heir to the throne, and so he's chased out of his own castle, and they're trying to murder him, and so Caspian is forced to rally the Narnian troops, who he discovers exists in the course of his journey, and then tries to fight against his own people.
What has happened to Narnia within the past thousands of years?
Basically, the Telmarines, who come from the country Telmar in the Lone Islands, have invaded and made the old Narnians, which are like, the fauns and the dwarfs that we know so well, extinct, or so they think. And basically it's up to the Pevensies to sort them out.
Indeed.
You took C.S. Lewis's actual written words and transformed it into a visual movie. Did your animation and visual effects background help you in that process?
I think it helped, yes, and in a number of different ways. One, I think, to not just exploit the effects for what they are, is to use them in service of the storytelling, because I wasn't that interested in doing effects. What I was interested in is doing effects that told the story. But certainly when it comes down to some fairly complex situations and scenes, it's good to be able to imagine and to know how ultimately the final image is going to come together.
And there's also a new leader, Prince Caspian, who is the prince of the Telmarines until he is forced out of their kingdom. How does Peter react to him?
Well, you know, Peter's already by this point at a huge inward battle with himself. You know, he's extremely insecure and he's extremely ego-driven. And so to meet somebody else he wants to be leader and wants, you know, has a bit of an ego is kind of an issue for Peter. And he has to really learn a very, very valuable lesson of teamwork through a humiliating event. And that humbles him to become the strong leader that he is and to pass it eventually on to Caspian.
But I think actually it's clear in the film that it's kind of born out of the frustration that they feel about making mistakes. You know, they make some bad decisions in this film and people get killed. And I think that they're both just concerned with the fact that they want to be leaders and they want to be real men, but they're still really just boys.
Prince Caspian? And who are you?
Peter!
Hi, King Peter. I believe you called.
So on set, did you actually have some kind of animosity towards the actor who played Prince Caspian, Ben Barnes?
Oh yeah, all the time. Ben and I are fighting physically on set. No, nothing like that. You know, actually, Ben's a really cool guy, and I'd go out and play pool with him. We'd play, you know, table tennis. We do man stuff. You know, we'd go out for a drink and have a laugh. And Ben and I have actually kind of a similar sense of humour. Both our favourite comedy is The Office, the English one, so we would quote The Office quite a lot on set.
All that you know is about to change.
Can you compare and contrast the visual style of Prince Caspian to that of the first one, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe?
You know, the last film was very much about winter and spring is always that rebirth, and it was about colour and brightness and all those kind of things. Now this is 1300 years older. The Telmarines have occupied Narnia. They've driven people into hiding, or driven the creatures into hiding. It's just a sort of a darker, grittier place, and so visually that sort of comes through. On top of that, the last film started with a wardrobe and slowly expanded until it was a bigger world. This movie kind of picks up from there and sort of keeps expanding, so Narnia has sort of continued to grow.
Yeah, I really loved the fact that the movie started off really intense and it just got even more intense to the very end.
Good,
I was
thank you.
totally on the edge of my seat the entire time.